Do you feel that everything is okay, but it's still not okay? Would you rather go to any other time and place if you had the opportunity? Do you get confused between your dreams and reality? In short, do you need a fantasy to survive your reality? If the answer to any of the above questions is yes, I want you to meet Charlie. I think you and him are going to be great friends. Hello, everyone. I'm back with another interesting lesson, which, wait for it, is not emotional. Yes, I'm talking about the dazzling piece of science fiction, The Third Level by Jack Finney. We have the summary, explanation, theme discussion, character sketch, and alternate endings to discuss. So, let's get right to it.
Let's do this.
The lesson begins with your best friend Charlie, a 31-year-old man who's the main character of the story, and he swears that he has been to the third level of the Grand Central Station. Now, why is that a problem? Because everyone knows that there are only two levels at the Grand Central Station in New York. Just to be safe and check that he hasn't gone cuckoo in the head, Charlie tells about the entire incident to his friend Sam, who's also a psychiatrist. Sam tells him that this is a waking wish fulfillment. Sam's theory is that Charlie is so disturbed by the complexities of the modern world, which is full of insecurity, war, worry, that he has started fantasizing about being in a different place that does not even exist. I know you can really sympathize with Charlie here at a time like this. But hold your horses as we have a lesson to cover. Charlie says that almost everyone is disturbed by the modern world, but they don't go off wandering to places that don't exist like ghosts. All of Charlie's friends agreed with Sam's analogy of the problem. They said that Charlie's recent activities, such as his stamp collecting, also points out that he wanted to resort to escapism. Something like a refuge that you're trying to create in order to feel protected. However, Charlie did not agree with this theory. His justification was that his grandfather started stamp collection back in the day when there was no war and no worry. It was only a time of peace and harmony and, moreover, security. There was no reason for his grandfather to be insecure, which proves that you don't need problems or a midlife crisis to start a new hobby. Moreover, his grandfather's stamp collection was remarkable, as he had blocks of 4 of practically every US issue of stamps. And in Charlie's defense, even President Roosevelt collected stamps. Now, Charlie started explaining what actually happened at the Grand Central Station. He begins his story by explaining how one day he chose to take the subway, which is what we call the metro in US, after a late night shift at work. He did this in order to save time. He describes himself as an ordinary man of 31, dressed in a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy bag. This description is to stress that Charlie was in a regular state of mind and he was actually not looking to escape anywhere. He just wanted to be with his wife Louisa at that hour, and he doesn't understand why this incident happened only with him. Charlie comes to the part of the incident where he entered the Grand Central from the Vanderbilt Avenue, and he took the stairs to the first level of the station where one boarded trains like the 20th century. Now, I want you to notice how he mentions the century he was living in just to state that he was in the present state and was absolutely not. Then he went down another floor to reach the second level from where the suburban trains leave. From there, he entered an arched doorway and got lost. It was nothing unusual for him because even if he had come to that station 1,000 times, he was always bumping into new corridors and doorways. It was such a big station that you couldn't possibly remember all of it at the same time. He wondered if the Grand Central was expanding at a very fast rate, just like a tree with its roots. He feels that it might be because the Grand Central is a place of exit for so many people, and that is how he escaped reality. Although he never shared this aspect of his theory with his psychiatrist, as it would have further proved that he was loony. Now, what's really weird is Charlie entered a bit unusual corridor that began angling to the left. He felt odd as the corridor was taking him downstairs to another level, and Charlie did not think that there existed a third level to the Grand Central Station. There was no one there except him, and the voice of his feet echoed. He finally heard the sound of people from a distance. Then He took a left and walked down the stairs again, only to reach the third level of the Grand Central Station. First, Charlie got confused and thought that maybe he made his way back to the second level of the Grand Central Station, but there were some very peculiar things that he noticed about this level that made him realize that that was not the case. He noticed that the room was smaller and there were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. The man in the booth also looked very different, and the entire station was very dim lit, for they were using open flame gas lights. Now these are lights which are operated with fuel and do not require electricity to run. These lights were used in the earlier centuries. Charlie could also notice brass spittoons. Now spittoons are jar-like structures in which people used to spit in the olden times. Suddenly, a glimpse of light caught his eye, and he saw a man pulling a gold watch from his vest. Again, in the 20th century, we use wristwatches. However, he sees this man who takes out a pocket watch. A woman walked in through the train gate, and she wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high button shoes. Leg of mutton sleeves are again those puffed sleeves which were used and worn by women in the earlier centuries. The man Charlie spotted was dressed in a very old-fashioned style. He was wearing a derby hat, which is a popular old-fashioned hat. That's when Charlie noticed that everyone at this level was dressed like they were in the 19th century. This was a time before all the deadly world wars took place. Charlie was surprised to see so many fancy beards and mustaches because he had never seen them before. He even saw a very small Carrier-Knives locomotive, and that was really surprising for him because they had closed business a long time back. And this confirmed Charlie's suspicion. To validate his suspicion, he went over to the newspaper boy who was selling the World newspaper. This is a newspaper that was discontinued long back. The date on the front page was also June 11, 1984. So, Charlie was now sure that he had gone back to the 19th century. Immediately, Charlie went to the ticket window to get the tickets for Galesburg, Illinois for him and his wife. Now, Illinois earlier was a town that offered a lot of greenery, peace, and the chance at a very merry life. He was well aware that from Illinois he could get tickets to anywhere in the United States. Charlie gets extremely excited as he describes how things were in 1984 before the two world wars even began. Evenings were twice as long, and men and women were living in peace and serenity. This was a world that Charlie desperately wanted to be a part of. As the ticket clerk calculated the fare, he looked at Charlie's fancy hat band as that was something he had never seen before, for obvious reasons. Charlie took out the money, but the clerk informed him that it wasn't the acceptable legal tender, and by any chance if he tried to be smart, he won't be able to get away with it. Charlie glanced at the ticket checker's cash drawer only to realize that the money that he was offering him was new currency, and what he needed to buy the ticket was the currency used in the 19th century. The bills were twice as big as the ones that he was using. Charlie ran out because he didn't want to go to jail for offering fake money. The day ended after he came out. The next day, Charlie was so excited that he withdrew all his savings and got them converted into old currency by paying some premium amount. It cost him a lot, and it even worried his psychiatrist friend, but Charlie still went with it, and he was not worried. Because back in the 19th century, eggs were as cheap as 3 cents a dozen. But unfortunately, Charlie could never find his way to the third level again, despite trying very hard. His wife Louisa was pretty worried when she got to know all about this, and she urged Charlie to stop looking. Finally, Charlie had to give up the search and went to his regular life. But something has changed now, as both Charlie and his wife Louisa are desperately looking for the third level of the Grand Central Station. What changed? They got proof that it does exist. What actually changed now was that somehow Charlie's friend Sam disappeared out of the blue. Nobody knew where he went, but Charlie had suspected that he had gone to Galesburg. Charlie eventually found proof that he had gone there. One night, Charlie came across a first day cover. A first day cover is an envelope with a stamp on it that stamp collectors mail to themselves. The reason they do that is when they post the letter, the stamp is pasted on the envelope, which later gets the date marked on it at the post office, proving that this envelope was mailed on the very same day the stamp was issued. Since that is the only purpose of this envelope, they are blank inside and do not contain any letter. First day covers are hence not meant to be opened, and the only reason they are even posted is so that they can be added to a stamp collection. Although this envelope was supposed to be blank like any other first day cover, Charlie suspected something and he opened it. And yes, his suspicion was right. There was a letter inside it. As Charlie began reading the letter, the writer had mentioned how once he heard Charlie's story, he was hoping against hope that it was true. Then he started believing it to be true. He finally found the third level and was now living in Galesburg, surprisingly in the year 1894. The writer of the letter mentioned that being in Galesburg at that particular time was truly wonderful as life was simple and peaceful. He urges Charlie to keep looking for the place and never give up. What is really ironic here is that the writer of this letter was none other than Sam, Charlie's psychiatrist. From the coin store that Charlie used to visit, he found out that Sam had bought old currency notes worth $800, and Charlie suspected that this amount was enough for him to start a hay and feed business. This was something that Sam had mentioned he always wanted to do. Clearly, there was no use for Sam's actual profession back in the 19th century. So the story ends on a very mysterious note where Charlie and his wife Louisa keep on searching for the third level in order to fulfill their desperate wish of traveling back through time. Now, clearly, this lesson has raised the theme of escapism, as not only does it talk about a psychological refuge from the grim realities of the present day world, but it also expresses a desire to stay with the past or to keep the past alive in the complexities of the present. Which brings me to the next theme, complexities of the modern world. The story also talks about somebody's fantasy of living in a peaceful world, since clearly this lesson was based right after the Second World War. This lesson also talks about the psychological effects of war, as it is quite evident that Charlie wanted to escape this world to avoid the consequences of the two world wars, as we see him mentioning it a lot of times in the lesson. Now, if you analyze the character of Charlie, you realize that he was a nervous yet peace-loving person. He found refuge in his stamp collection as a hobby, and though he was young, he feared to live in this war-ridden world. His longing for some idyllic and peaceful place like Galesburg makes him stray to a corridor at the Grand Central Station that took him to the third level. It was from there that he wanted to take a train to the past, to the year 1984. Analyzing the traits of the protagonist, we realize that the ending of this lesson is open to a lot of interpretations. Let me quickly tell you what I think could be the possible interpretations of this ending. Interpretation 1. Now, this is the most common analogy and the most standard answer from the exam point of view. This analogy states that Charlie did actually travel to the past and the whole thing was true, since he eventually found proof in the first day cover that this place existed and he wasn't simply hallucinating. So this analogy states that whatever Charlie saw and did was right from the very beginning. Now, all the other interpretations I give you after this one are not very helpful from the board's point of view, as they will not help you in scoring 100. But personally, I feel this is the most interesting aspect of the video. So if you want some food for thought, hang on. Now, my second analogy states that Charlie was hallucinating this entire time because he was suffering from a mental illness. Maybe him finding the first day cover was also a part of this hallucination, or maybe subconsciously he wrote that first day cover himself in order to prove his theory right to Louisa or to get her help in trying to find the third level. Now, that is some psycho crazy nonsense, but let's face it, we are living in a world full of psycho crazy nonsense. Now, my third analogy states that Charlie was suffering from hallucinations himself, and he triggers the same hallucinations in Sam. Now, Sam was a psychiatrist who had to listen to everyone's problems and trauma and everything as a part of his profession, which to a certain extent affected him, and he, in an attempt to find an escape, just like Charlie, started hallucinating himself. This psychiatrist turned patient theory is too much to digest, and I know that, but anything is possible in life and literature, and I think we all know that. My fourth analogy states that Charlie was suffering from an incurable mental disease, and his wife and his psychiatrist already knew that. So, in order to make him come to terms with his reality and not disturb his mind further, they were trying to create these fake scenarios like writing the first day cover and helping him look for the third level of the Grand Central Station so that he can be at peace with what he saw and is actually able to cope with his mental illness. This is actually a mind-boggling Shutter Island kind of philosophy, but you'd be surprised by the various ways in which people deal with mental patients just so that they can create an environment where they're able to live peacefully. My fifth and final analogy is a little inspired by Interstellar or from your lesson, The Adventure, which states that probably the third level of this station was a parallel universe which was found by Charlie. And the reason that only Charlie or Sam could find it would be that these two were the only ones who were looking for it with a very strong thought. Do you agree with any of my analogies, or do you think there is another aspect to this ending that I haven't explored? If so, I would love to hear all about it in the comments, so please do share. We have reached the end of today's tutorial.
Wow! Time to get serious. Time to get serious!
There are too many people who are out there who look absolutely alright, but what we can't imagine is that there are demons in their head that they're dealing with on a daily basis. We can't possibly imagine the kind of mental thoughts and illnesses that people are dealing with. And the only way for us to be able to help them is to realize that mental illnesses do exist. The second would be that we need to make ourselves available to anyone and everyone. If for nothing, then just to lend a sympathetic ear. You have no idea how many lives can be saved if we become just a little bit more inclusive as a society. So on that note, I end today's video. Please mention any doubts or alternate ideas in the comments below, and if there's any part of the lesson that you want me to elaborate, do let me know. As always, take care of your body, mind and spirit.